Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. Well, a different vibe to this. It's 7 walking maps of London.
Okay, I'll tell you how that all came about.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I know Hong Kong so well is because I worked in Chinatown for 6 years. I was a travel agent for the majority of my working career. I was 30 years in the travel business working for airlines.
Oh.
I worked in travel agencies. And one of the travel agencies I worked in was a company called Jade Travel. Now, Jade Travel, you probably know of them in Hong Kong because they have branches in Hong Kong. But they also have a subsidiary called Yupo Air. Now, Yupo Air used to fly charters of Chinese people from England to China, to England to Hong Kong. And I worked in Wardour Street, which was in Chinatown. Now, how the maps came about was, I don't know if you're familiar with the British transport system, but in the 80s, it was diabolical. We used to have, underground go missing in terms of, the trains wouldn't work and things like that. So one night I was stuck at Tottenham Court Road and I was looking around for a bus or a taxi. It was pouring with rain and I thought, Christ, I've got to get to Liverpool Street. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? I've got to walk. So I walked. But I took shortcuts. So instead of going the normal way that you would from Tottenham Court Road to the city, I started to take shortcuts. And those shortcuts, when I looked at my watch, I was only about 25 minutes into the walk by the time I'd got to Liverpool Street. And I realised, hold on, if I can do this in 25 minutes from Tottenham Court Road, maybe it's possible to be able to do 6 or 7 minutes from different locations in, mainland railway stations to various tube stations.
Right.
Now, by doing that, people used to go from, let's say they used to go from Bank or from Monument to Bank. Now, Monument to Bank is literally 3 minutes. That's all it is. But they would travel that far, or they would go from Bank to Liverpool Street. Now, Bank to Liverpool Street is 10 minutes or something like that, okay? Now, Bank to Liverpool Street would be crammed, absolutely crammed. So you'd get all these people trying to go on the underground for the sake of 1 or 2 stops. So my idea was, let's try and find short distance walks where people can not bother with the trains, not bother with the underground, not bother with the buses. Purely by fate, about a week later, there's this thing buzzing around in my head. I met a taxi driver, a chap called Jim O'Brien, nice guy. And Jim and I spoke in the cab as he was taking me back to the railway station. And I said to him, look, I've got this idea. And he said, well, the knowledge, actually, which is the taxi driver's, if you like, Bible, that will actually show you quick routes. It will show you routes on how to get from A to B without all the fuss and everything else. So I said, I'll tell you what, why don't you draw me up, say, 12 routes, from mainline stations to within a radius of, say, 15 minutes, just maximum like that. So he said, yeah, all right, I don't mind doing that. So he took my number and everything else. And I didn't hear from him for about a week, 10 days. And then he came in the office and he had all these different routes. And I thought, blimey, you've done really well. So I had a graphic designer, a chap that I used to use, and I took it over to him. And he said, well, look, the best thing for you to do is don't take the traditional A to Z map, but create your own map. So what we did was we created our own map based on central railway stations being at the centre of the map, and then the offshoots, the routes going from the central railway station. So when it came to it and you gave the directions were the same as the knowledge of the taxi driver.
What I have of this, what I really appreciate is here you are, you're like living your life, and then you have this sort of the sensibility of being a tourist, right? From your work, putting together packages and all this stuff. And then you kind of you can connect the dots, and then you say, oh, wait a second. Getting around London can be, it's relatively well known for it being a little bit tedious or slow or whatever. And so you have this entrepreneurial impulse. So the walking maps of London, here in the graphic, it says 7 walking maps. But did you do a series of these, or did you only print one sort of?
Well, I did all the mainline stations. I started with Liverpool Street, Fenchurch Street, Cannon Street, and then we went across to Waterloo. We did King's Cross. We did theatre walks, which was around the West End. We did Royal Walk, which was around the Royal Palaces. And we also did a river walk as well.
Are these still available?
Unfortunately not, because basically the company went bust. I didn't have enough money for it to keep going. I tried different ways of to raise funds. I even got divorced because I wanted to get funds to actually raise enough money for us to be able to develop a company. We did develop a company eventually, but not sufficient enough money. And again, it came down to, if you don't have the advertising budget, we tried out everywhere, every which way you could imagine. We did TV sponsorship for a charity walk. We did that. We did printed the maps in Filofax version, if you remember what a Filofax was like. And we got into several shops. London Tourist Board loved it. And then, unfortunately, I was looking around for a business angel. I got a business angel that came up, and I said to him, look, we're going to need around, say, 25,000. And he said, well, that's not a problem. And then I put all my eggs in one basket, thinking this bloke was going to come up with the 25,000, and he went bust. So there I was left with nothing.
Okay. Well, then the big question is, for a listener today, clearly making maps at this point isn't a thing. Making a walking tour, walking maps, that could be a thing. But in terms of, like, what is the lesson that we can distill from what you learned for somebody who's like, in terms of, because I really appreciate this idea of you going around and having this entrepreneurial sort of spirit to say, oh, hey, wait a second, maybe we can do something here. And as you saw, it's quite challenging.
Yes.
So what is the lesson? What's the lesson we can share?
Okay, well, the lesson is, don't go into something unless you have the substance to be able to follow it up. It doesn't matter what you go into. You can't go in on a wing and a prayer. You've got to go in with substantial backing right from the beginning. You need collateral, and that, above all, is the most important. Because when you try to do something on a wing and a prayer, invariably it doesn't work out, because you're limited with what you can actually do then. You're limited to the fact that you only have so much budget. So where do you put the budget? Yeah. And let's say you put your budget into an advertising campaign, and that advertising campaign bombs, you've lost everything from that point of view. So if you're going into from an entrepreneurial point of view, you must have the backing to be able to substantiate what you want to do.
Right.
If you don't, then you're climbing up a hill and you're sliding back down before you even get to the top.
Right. Excellent advice. 7 walking maps of London, the dynasty and the empire that could have been. Do you want to go on to the next photo?
Yeah, I mean, problem is, Rod, I'm not very good with directions. And my wife will tell you,
Okay.
I can't tell my left from my right. I am absolutely diabolical with directions. How the hell I invented a mapping thing, I do not know. I really do not know.
Okay.
I can't tell you. It was all down to Jim doing what he could do. I gave him the premise, but he was the guy who put it together. And together with the art director, the chap, I don't know if he's still alive now, because he was quite old then in those days. A chap called Bob Holman. He was very, very clever, and he was concocted the whole thing. I just came up with the idea.
Well, it's great. I mean, in a way, entrepreneurship is about bringing together a team.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So there is that.
Yeah.
So is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw.